The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everybody. We are so sorry for getting started late and really appreciate everybody who is able to join us. Thank you so much for joining for the ABCs of School Gardens webinar hosted by Healthy Schools Campaign. We truly appreciate people taking the time to join us. I realized it looks like we had an issue with our slides. So anyways, I will start one more time. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for the ABCs of School Gardens webinar. We truly appreciate people taking the time to join us, and we're so sorry for getting started late. We were having some technical difficulties on our end, but we are up and running now. So my name is Alex Mays, and I'm the Senior Policy Analyst at Healthy Schools Campaign, which is the organization that's hosting today's webinar. We'll tell you a little bit more about Healthy Schools Campaign in a few minutes, but first we just wanted to walk through some of the logistics for today's webinar. Today's webinar is going to run for about an hour, and a recording of the webinar is going to be available online. So we'll be sure to share that link. We'll share the presenter slides from today. And feel free to share that around through your networks if there's anybody you know that wasn't able to be here today. We also have a very quick survey at the end of the webinar that shouldn't take more than a minute to complete. So please go ahead and do that. We also will save the final 15 minutes of the webinar for question and answer session, which is our favorite part of the webinar. You can send in those questions throughout the webinar using the chat function, which is located on the control panel on the side of your screen. So save up those questions, enter them in. We have some wonderful experts on our call today and are excited to have them here to answer questions for us. So here is our fantastic lineup of speakers. We have Rosa Ramirez-Richter from Healthy Schools Campaign, Michael Heitkamp, who is the principal at Green Elementary, Kristen Laverde, who's the education coordinator for Open Lands, which is one of Healthy Schools Campaign's fantastic partners, and Drew Thomas from the Office of Student Health and Wellness in Chicago Public Schools. So without further ado, I would like to turn it over to my colleague, Rosa, who's the Senior Manager of Chicago Program and Policy at Healthy Schools Campaign. She works with a wide range of school leaders, community members, nonprofits, and community organizations. And through these collaborations, help schools create healthy environments where wellness, healthy eating, physical activity, and nutrition education are priorities. So I will hand it over to Rosa.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks for that lovely introduction. So good morning, everyone. I just wanted to share a little bit about Healthy Schools Campaign before we get started. Basically, we are an independent nonprofit organization, and we are really founded on the simple and common sense notion that healthy students are better learners. And we believe that health and wellness should be incorporated into every aspect of the school experience. And we believe that all children deserve healthy schools. So to that effect, we have a variety of programs that we do to empower school stakeholders to make changes in their schools. And one such program, which is a part of today's webinar, is the Fit to Learn program. And this is a professional development that we created here in Chicago to equip educators, both teachers and principals, with the knowledge and skills to make healthy habits a routine part of how kids learn. So we talk about school wellness, but how does that translate into the everyday school environment? And this no-cost professional development program just does that. You know, it really highlights best practices that schools are doing to create healthier environments. And today's focus is school gardens, so we'll get into that a little bit more. But if you're interested in learning more about Fit to Learn or bringing it to sit in the city to you, please contact us. We do customized trainings or do train-the-trainer sessions as well. So I just want to share a little bit about that before we get going. Right, so the topic of today is school gardens, and you know what's so fantastic about school gardens is that you have reactions like this. You see a student holding a carrot. This is from a harvest that they did earlier. I think it was actually last school year. But we do this because you know there's a variety of learning benefits, but also social and emotional benefits. But I'm going to here on this slide, I listed, I try to summarize different categories of the benefits we see through school gardens. And the different speakers on today's webinars will go into in depth about each of these in a different way. But I wanted to share a little bit about how school gardens provide hands-on learning opportunities in a wide array of disciplines. So how does garden-based learning impact academic outcomes in schools? There's been a meta-analysis of different studies, I think 48 studies that they've done, that demonstrate positive impacts that school gardens have on direct academic outcomes. And the highest positive impact really was for science, and then followed by math and the language arts. And then there are also indirect academic outcomes that were measured, and that's mostly around social development. So for example, one study, surveyed 5th grade students who participated in school gardening activities, and they scored significantly higher on science achievement tests than students who had a curriculum without a garden experience. And the examples are countless. Again, at the end of our webinar, we could send kind of our sources that we cite through here. But evaluations of similar programs found that, the greatest gains were in science achievement gains. So just something to think about in presenting if you're trying to win over school administrators and getting a school garden in place. The other thing is it's a great place for students to work cooperatively and creatively. Often we see, emergent research shows that the social and emotional development is easily fostered in natural environments like a school garden. So students that may be having a tough time in school, in the classroom, they found that it was very beneficial that they showed the garden as a medium to show cooperation and help them be kind and gentle with their peers. And that's something that they learn from tending to a vegetable garden. So when children learn to water flowers or avoid trampling small plants, they start to imitate these behaviors and apply them to other situations. So what studies have shown is students who participate in garden-based learning show a significant increase in self-understanding and the ability to work in groups compared to non-participating students. So more food for thought. And then the other big area that we like to tout about school gardens is that it does provide this tangible benefit. Children who grow their own food are more likely to eat fresh fruits and vegetables or express a preference for these foods. And they often take these preferences then back to their families. So it's a great opportunity to embed health and wellness habits. Again, here's the overview of kind of benefits that we see. That obviously school gardens also provide an outdoor space for exercise and activity. They provide a gathering place, for community, and it also fosters this lifelong relationship to the environment. Again, my colleagues will go deeper into one of these points as our presentations go on, but I wanted to share this framework before we dive into specific examples.
Great. Thank you so much, Rosa, for that wonderful background and providing us more information just about all of the benefits of school gardens. So we are very happy today to have Michael Heitkamp, who's the principal at Green Elementary, which is a local Chicago elementary. I know there are people on the webinar today from across the country. Healthy Schools campaign is based in Chicago, so our emphasis and our work is in Chicago, but we're hoping by sharing the lessons that we've learned and great examples like the work that Principal Heitkamp is leading, that others across the country can learn from this work. So I will introduce Principal Heitkamp in a moment, but first we have a quick poll question for everybody. We want to know who's out there. So tell us who you are. Are you a principal, a parent, teacher, nonprofit advocate, or are you in another category? So Michael Heitkamp is the principal at Green Elementary. Green was awarded the gold certification of the Healthier U.S. School Challenge for meeting the rigorous requirements on nutrition education, physical activity, and school food. He's been working along Green's Wellness Committee to advance a variety of health and wellness projects, including a health night, family cooking classes, aerobics classes, and after-school student programming focused on health and wellness. He's eager and looking forward to supporting the Wellness Committee's ongoing leadership in developing new programming and workshops in this school year. He is a member of Healthy Schools Campaign's Fit to Learn Principal Advisory Committee and a wonderful partner and supporter of Healthy Schools in Chicago. So we are so happy to have him here today. I will go ahead and share the results of those polls just so people know who's out there. It looks like we have a few principals, parents, a good number of teachers, nonprofit advocates, and then that other category, which we would love to know if you marked yourself as other, if you could just chat in who you are, and we can hopefully do a better job of capturing information about who is out there. So without further ado, I will now hand it over to Michael. Take it away.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Once again, I'm Michael Heitkamp. I'm principal at Nathaniel Green Elementary. For those of you that aren't from Chicago, it's the community that we're in has very limited green space, and so kind of in thinking about the role that we play as a school and looking beyond just sort of our immediate students and their families, we really see this garden space functioning as a resource to all members of our local community as well. And I think it's really, really important if you're in a position of trying to pitch this, is really thinking about the various roles that gardens can play in the lives of the stakeholders, right, to whom you're going to be speaking. And so we'll start a little bit with that, or I'll start with that in talking about the different ways in which we've talked about our garden and utilized our garden here at Green. Next slide. So looking at it sort of for us, it's these various contexts, right? The academic context, the context of building community, and also our commitment to health and wellness. Each of those can very much speak to different people. I think another piece as well is this idea of setting your school apart. It's becoming more and more challenging in terms of raising funds and having the funds you need to be able to run a school at a high level and to have all the programming that you want for your students. And I think another way in which the garden can function is also as a tool in seeking out funds that really sort of sets your school apart from possibly other schools that are competing for some of the same monies. So to talk a little bit about kind of like how we look at it as an academic resource. So I think clearly, as was stated before, this idea of hands-on science, we believe that's the best way to do science, is to have kids actually as scientists. And so it becomes a real challenge for us to find authentic venues in which students can have those sorts of experiences. And the garden is clearly a great place for that. Also in terms of bringing in other disciplines, this idea of we give our students a lot of independent reading time so that they're working directly with PECs. And so that outdoor space and that garden space really gives them another environment in which they can have sort of a change of pace in terms of their lives as independent readers. We also know that kids as readers need a tremendous amount of building up of their schema, their background information and knowledge. And once again, having experiences like that in different environments allows different sorts of conversations to happen and for kids to build up and strengthen their schema as readers. Writing, it's great to get kids outside in the spring and in the fall. A lot of our teachers, both in the context of science, but then also in the context of writing, use that environment as a space of inspiration for students to both create writing and also to share their writing with one another. And then you'll see some photos, but we also very much see this garden space as a public space, and it becomes a space in which our students once again get access to an authentic audience. And so we have artwork, student-designed artwork. We have banners that the students have created. We also have mosaics as well. We're looking to build in some peace benches and some friendship benches that the students will be making. So really trying to create a space in which we can showcase a lot of what's happening inside our school publicly. Also, seeing this as a community resource, right? So going beyond just our parents and our students, we do. We're looking to do some installation artwork and to be part of a larger sort of opening up of our garden to the community, so that they can come in and not just see what we're doing, but also see the space as a public space and a space that they can enjoy as well. We do a back-to-school event in which we invite not just our families and children, but members of the community to come and sit and spend time in the garden. There's usually still things to be picked and harvested at that time. And so letting the community know, we've got several people that live around our school that over the summer, during the summer months, they help tend to our garden in addition to our families. They feel a real level of ownership, which particularly in the area where we're at, having people nearby that watch the garden and keep an eye on it, it's a powerful way of just protecting this space for the community as well. And then obviously as a health and wellness resource, we use the outdoor space for recess, but then in addition to that, we also do things like Eat What You Grow, so they bring the veggies into the cafeteria a couple times a year. Those get showcased, and then they get put on the food line so that kids actually have an opportunity to taste what is being produced in our garden. We have a world cuisine class where our students are working with Common Threads. It's an organization that we partner with where they are cooking meals from around the world in over an 8-week period. We have a family cooking class where we have about 8 families that meet once a month, and they come and they exchange recipes, and they use our facilities to cook together. And that's, once again, it's a program with Common Threads where they work with a local chef. And then also we have Harvest Week, Summer Fall Harvest, where we try to we had some huge pumpkins this year. So we try to bring in some of the things that, we have apple trees as well. We bring in what we harvest, and we have a variety of different contests and fun games that the students can get involved in as well here. And a majority of our students are Latino, and that's their background. And so many of them are first generations. And working with the land and is something that they bring with them as part of who they are. And so it's also a really powerful tool in really, once again, elevating parents as experts. A lot of their parents have a tremendous amount of knowledge and expertise in the area of gardening. And so this is a great way to kind of allow students to maybe engage their parents and their family members in conversations that maybe they haven't had an opportunity to, and in conversations in which the parent feels a real level of competency in terms of teaching and mentoring their children as well. Next slide. So what we did was we've had a couple different stages to our work in the garden, and in every stage we've really tried to involve as many people as possible. And I think, you know, as everyone knows, sometimes the process is much more powerful than the actual product, and so we're very intentional around the process. And so working with the kitchen community, we had a donation. We first started by using the raised beds, and you can see them there. That was the first stage of our development of our garden. It was part of a $100,000 grant that we received from the district to create an outdoor learning space. Kind of what I talked about before with the grant writing piece of, we really tied in that health and wellness component and the gardening component into a larger grant around developing our students academically and social-emotionally, and we were able to be one of just a handful of schools that received the grant. So this was the first stage in which we had the raised beds, so that was part of that first stage. If we can go to the next slide, please. And then out of those raised beds, we did some planting in the fall. So we did some planting of garlic, so that right away in the spring, kids were seeing things growing as a great motivator. Next slide, please. We also created a rain garden in another space, so trying to create some diversity around the way in which we used our garden space, and thinking too again about like what do we want kids exploring and looking at. So a lot of native vegetation was created, and the students did all of that planting on their own. So there's obviously research components that can be put into place here, as well as science-based exploration of sort of what's growing, what's not growing, what are they noticing about how the climate's impacting the plants that they're putting in place, making predictions as well. So we tried to use kind of the space in a variety of different ways, and once again, getting kids engaged at all parts of the process. Next slide, please. So this kind of gives you a little bit of an overview of the of our space, and what it was before was very much kind of like just gravel. There was a very old play structure that was in back. We wanted to really create open play in our back space. In the foreground is the raised beds, and then sort of in the middle is the rain garden. And as part of our second stage, if you look to the left, there's you can kind of see a fence there, and you can also see that there's space between the sidewalk and the fence. And so in that space, we did the second stage of our installation, which was 7 additional raised beds. And so actually, if you want to go to the next slide, that'd be great. So I'll talk a little bit about those 7 raised beds when we get to the Walkathon pictures, because the students raised the money for those beds. But once again, this gives you a little bit of sense of some of the ways in which we're utilizing that outdoor space to support academic development. Okay, next slide. And then this is part of the Eat What You Grow program. So we have students who are able to harvest lettuce, carrots, tomatoes, and then bring that into the cafeteria. Those veggies are showcased so that kids know what they're eating. They know that it's from the garden. And once again, I think they feel a real level of ownership. And one of the goals is to try to get them to try veggies. And so we do it in a variety of different ways. And one of the ways is that they're the ones that are producing the vegetables, and we see that as a real motivator for them to maybe try a vegetable that they hadn't in the past. Next slide. Okay, so this is these are some photos of our Walkathon. So once again, kind of utilizing the space in a wide range of different ways. If you notice in the picture to the top, on the top left, that's the space that I'm talking about. So this was the Walkathon in our first year after we got the raised beds. And that space alongside the fence now has 7 additional raised garden beds that we just started planting in last spring. And all that money was raised by the students during the Walkathon. So once again, thinking about those different levels, and it's the students and families that raise that money. Really making sure that the kids know that everything that's being developed, they have a hand in, and that they are developing sort of the resources that they can use and that future generations of green students can use to further their development and development of the community. So that's another way in which we've hooked in some of the other events that we do and developed health and wellness initiatives around the garden. Next slide. This is another. We do our back-to-school picnic. The garden's a great venue for doing that. We have tours of the garden during our back-to-school picnic. We're also part of a garden tour in McKinley Park, which is our area of the city, and putting parents and students in charge of those tours, so that they're the docents in bringing families and community members around to see some of the different things that are being planted and that are growing. So once again, building up their pride and their sense of ownership over that garden. Next slide. So this here you can see kind of the additional beds being installed, and once again, just another great community building opportunity. Teachers, students, families, all getting together on a Saturday and working on those garden beds. And then ultimately, we had different grade levels taking on different beds, and that's something that we want to continue to develop further. We'd love to make it like an RFP process where they're writing specific proposals for taking on particular beds, and working on the design and layout of those beds. Once again, in terms of thinking of like math, really doing some intentional work around how they want to utilize those beds, thinking about what they want to plant in it, having kind of a holistic view if they want to do like a pizza garden, if they want to do something more more traditional for them and for their families, but allowing students to make those decisions and then create a very formalized presentation in an attempt to win that particular bed for their grade level for that planting season. Next step, or next slide, please. Now, another piece that we've just started is we have a gardening club that's kind of new this year, and so we see a big part of the gardening club in getting our indoor program going. We've also started some composting as well, some worm composting in classrooms. And so it's an opportunity to kind of bring this full year and also to have plants ready to go, some starters ready to go at the beginning of the spring season so that kids can experience the harvest at an even earlier time than the end of summer, fall. Next slide. So that's just an example of some of the artwork, some of the panel artwork that's out there as part of the space. And like I said before, we really see it as an area that potentially becomes a showcase space that can change up at different times. We really want to do more installation work, and we've done things before with a variety of different installation I've seen from trees, and want to do more sculpture work and more model work that can actually be freestanding in that space as well. Next slide. So, so things that we've learned, and we're still very much, as you can see, in the beginning stages of this. Having quick wins and thinking about those quick wins. I mean, having that initial, those initial beds kind of like up and running. And we didn't really set a high expectation for the summer because we knew that it would be a little bit of time before we started to build up the base. We needed to have parents coming in the summer and watering consistently and working, but we definitely wanted that spring to be strong in terms of having everyone involved in the installation of the beds, and then really thinking about when everyone's back in the fall, how we want to utilize the harvest to get people excited about the following year. So it took us one summer, 2 summers ago, before we got to a point where we felt like this last summer we had a consistent group of parents coming every week that were tending to the garden. But that took us a little bit of time. Having somebody on staff or a faculty member, right, that's truly passionate about the work, it's just really important that you've got a steward, someone there that is going to be a champion of the garden at the school. And then, like we've been talking about, just see it as more than a garden. I think clearly it's because that's the best way to serve the students, but also it's a great way to promote the garden and to really get the greatest amount of buy-in across stakeholders. Next slide. You can go to this is the farm-to-table harvest, which you already spoke to. You can go to the next slide. In this example, some of the composting we're doing, we're actually looking at Chicago Public Schools has a more developed composting program now where we can actually start to take some of what's being thrown out in the cafeteria and bringing that in for use in our garden. And so we're going to be exploring that. As of right now, most of the composting is happening in individual classrooms. Next slide. Another way that we're working on trying to integrate it more into the classroom itself is through a variety of different read-aloud texts. that we're exposing children to, families to, as well, just as another way to sort of keep this front and center, make it fun, and to make kids aware of the fact that like they need to be developing themselves, trying new things, and really taking ownership over their own health and wellness. Next slide. And those are some of the things that we're looking at continuing to build in over time. All right, next slide. So if anyone has any questions, obviously you'll have time at the end. Happy to answer them. Once again, we're still exploring this, really kind of letting our parents and families lead the process. But I'm always happy to be a resource to anyone interested in getting this started or developing it further. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Michael. That was wonderful, and it's always so exciting to see what's going on at Green, especially in the middle of winter here in Chicago, and to see those plants sprouting and remember that there's a lot to look forward to this spring. So thanks so much for sharing that. Next, we're going to be joined by Kristen Loverde from Open Lands. Before I hand it over to Kristen, I want to do another poll question. What type of garden are you most interested in? Indoor classroom garden, outdoor learning garden, both? Not sure. I'll do a quick intro of Kristen. So as I said, Kristen is the education coordinator with Open Lands. Before joining the Open Lands team, Kristen worked for Southern Illinois University as the program coordinator for the Underway Adventure Environmental Adventures program at Touch of Nature Environmental Center. She developed, implemented, and managed various outdoor programs for kindergartners through adults. And since moving back to Chicago, she was the lead instructor for a horticultural landscape design program at a Chicago public high school as part of the After School Matters program. To date, she has assisted with installing over 10 school gardens and has facilitated a wide range of teacher workshops. And here at Healthy Schools Campaign, we've had the opportunity to work with Kristen on some of the schoolyards that we've been building in Chicago. We truly appreciate her joining us today and appreciate the wonderful work that she's leading with Open Lands. So I will now quickly share the results of the poll. It looks like most people are interested in learning about both types of garden, but outdoor learning garden is the main one that people are interested in learning about. So I'm sure we will have some more information about those. And I will now hand it over to Kristen.
Great, thank you, and thanks for the introduction. I just want to really quickly just talk about Open Lands. Open Lands, we are a conservation organization. We're regionally, so we do a lot of work in northeastern Illinois, a bit up in Wisconsin, and a little bit in Indiana as well. As an organization, we believe that nature is vital to all people. Our work does include land preservation, land restoration work, creating accessible trails for people, for both hiking foot trails as well as waterway trails. And a lot of our on-the-ground work occurs in the Chicago area. We have worked with many communities in the Chicago area to create green space through planting trees. We have a tree keeper program, through creating community gardens. We have a garden keeper program, and our building school gardens program. Building school gardens started in 2006, and thus far we have installed and continue to support approximately 60 schools, Chicago public schools. So why school gardens? I know that Rosa as well as Principal Heitkamp had shared quite a few benefits pertaining to school gardens. And I just wanted to kind of touch base on a few of the other benefits. Excuse me. So school gardens, they are a great way to be able to provide access to nature, not just to the children at the school, but the community as a whole. And this can be accessed on a daily basis. About 80% of the population lives in metropolitan areas. And in these areas, there's a small amount of green space, as Mike had mentioned in his community. And so with the small amount of green space, there's not much space for folks to interact with nature. Some areas do have parks, some have access to forest preserves, but not all of these green spaces are accessible in walking distance, at least for walking distance for the children. So that's why for open lands it's very important. We really feel that the school grounds are vital in connecting people to nature, connecting the people to nature where they live. So the piece I wanted to focus on is the nature piece. Is that why is being outdoors, why is connecting nature important? There's a fantastic website, the Children in Nature Network, that identifies a lot of research that supports what the benefits are to being outdoors. So not necessarily you know, being in the garden, getting your hands dirty, but just being outdoors. As Mike had mentioned as well, is that these spaces can be used for throughout all of the disciplines. So science, math, writing, art, and just even a space for children to go out and just sit and relax. A lot of the garden spaces are designed to where they're close to the playground area as well, so that if the students during recess, they just wanted a place to sit and relax, that's a place that they can do that as well. So in regards to the nature aspect, I just wanted to share a couple benefits with you. So it has been documented that it combats the nature deficit disorder, and I'm not sure if all of you are familiar with that. So that is a term that has been coined that explains how our society as a whole is disconnected with nature and how that is affecting our children. There's a true disconnect, not just with children, but all of us with the outdoors. And that the school gardens actually provide that space to be able to connect to the outdoors. It also strengthens the cognitive abilities and the capacity to concentrate. Daily exposure to nature, it increases the ability to focus, not just in children, but for all of us, that this is very beneficial. Just personally, I know even, you know, just going outside for a walk kind of helps clear my mind and brings me back to be able to be focusing a little bit more. And then also, there's research that shows that it can also decrease stress, and it can literally make people happy, that there's actually some microorganisms that are in the soil that if your hands are in there, that it can actually boost your feelings, make you happy. So a couple schools that I've worked with, they actually leave one of their raised beds and where they don't plant anything. So that's just a bed that the children know that they can actually just go and get their hands in there, and just to be able to have that feeling with the soil. Next slide, please. So those are just a few of the benefits of school gardens and the importance of getting outdoors. Again, I want to stress not just for our children, but for us as well, as for adults, all adults. And now I just wanted to share with you a couple tips on what can make your school garden successful. Next slide, please. So when starting a school garden, or even if you're looking to continue to support your school garden or to maintain an existing school garden, there's several factors that should be considered. I have them kind of categorized into three categories. So there's people resources that I'll get into a little bit more in a minute, and then there's material resources. And when I talk about material resources, that's talking about like the funding aspect. So thinking about the funding piece, like where are you able to get the dollars, not just for the initial installation of the garden, but also being able to have funds to be able to support the maintenance. So to being able to support any plants that need to be replaced, or if you need additional compost, which if you have a vegetable garden, you will need to add compost every year. So being able to have the dollars to be able to purchase those resources. And then some other, under the others, what we have under there is time. So a successful garden is going to take time. So there's going to be time in planning, which is great that this workshop webinar is happening now in February, because there's many, many times where we get calls in April from folks wanting to start a school garden for that spring, and at that point it's a little bit too late. So planning and really thinking about who's going to be involved in the garden, and thinking about how that garden is going to support the school community, thinking about how it's going to be integrated in the school as a whole. And as Mike had mentioned as well, the time, it took Green Elementary about 2 years, I think he had said, in order to really get their schedule together on how that space is going to be maintained. And just recognizing that it's not going to happen overnight, and that, as you're going through the process, is that, things may change. You're going to learn a lot. Some things are going to work, and some things will not. And then also is creating a stewardship schedule. So the stewardship schedule, we refer to that as how that space is going to be maintained, who is going to be involved in watering, who's going to be involved in weeding, who's going to be involved in any type of harvesting that may occur, and additional roles that might come with having the garden. And lastly is access to support. So here in Chicago, there are a lot of fantastic organizations that support school gardens. They support school gardens by possibly giving funding, but also just having, providing resources and just having the knowledge to be able to support school gardens. So now I want to go back to the people piece. Next slide, please. So the people resources. So in creating a school garden, we want that space, as I mentioned, to be used. So really thinking about how that space is going to support the whole school community. Having the school administration support is very important, not just support in saying, yeah, that's great, you can create a school garden, but really having the support and to make it like an integral part of the school community. Having the staff support. Just having one staff person can be very difficult to be able to get it as part of the school community. So having additional staff to support that space. The community and parent involvement, it's very important as well, especially with the stewardship of the space over the summer. The community and parents, as Mike had mentioned, how they have the community members and parents coming in the summer, actually actively using those raised beds, and then also just taking care of the overall space, which is very important. So all of this information is located in, we have a Building School Gardens manual, and it goes into a little bit more detail. And that manual, it can be downloaded from our website, which is at openlands.org. And if you have any additional questions, feel free to, I guess you'll be typing them in later at the end of this webinar.
Great. Thank you so much, Kristen. We really appreciate you sharing all that information. Our next speaker is Drew Thomas from Chicago Public Schools. I just want to do a quick check and make sure. Drew, are you there? We might have, might not be able to hear Drew. So I think what we will do, Drew, if you are able to get on, try speaking up. But we'll, in the meantime, I know it's 10:30, which is originally when the webinar was scheduled to end. So we can take a few questions for Michael and Kristen. And please just feel free to send those questions in through the box on your control panel. And send them in at any time. We've had a number come in already. So I can start asking those. So the first question, there actually are a lot. The first question is for Principal Heitkamp and wanting to know what the biggest challenge was with setting up your school garden.
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge was really making sure that people felt a consistent commitment to it. I think there's a tendency to get really, really excited about things initially and the ideas, but something with the garden is really, has been stated. It's really a long-term commitment, over several years, and so I think over the entire year as well. So I think that's probably, is our ongoing challenge of really making sure that we consistently work on making all community members feel a level of responsibility for the garden, not just in the spring and the fall, but over the summer as well. So I think that's something that we continually struggle with as new parents come in, of really making sure that that those new parents are getting access to the garden, because they're going to be the next generation of stewards along with their children of that space. So really trying to make it a self-sustaining space. That takes a lot of work and planning.
Great, thank you so much. And Kristen, maybe, I don't know if in your work with many schools on this, are there common barriers that you see? What are some trends that you've seen and lessons you've learned from addressing those?
The one that comes up, well, actually there's two that comes up quite a bit, is the stewardship of the space over the summer and how that space is maintained, and then also just having time for teachers, just having time in the day to actually be able to take your students outside. So with and I think this is pretty much nationally, these are the two main challenges. And as Green Elementary has clearly shown, that really working together and trying to figure out a plan and including and incorporating as many people as possible from the school community to be able to assist with that has made that successful for them.
Great, thank you so much. I think that's really helpful insight to share. And then the next question is for Michael. You mentioned that Chicago Public Schools has a plan for composting, and it is also being done in classrooms. Can you speak a little bit more about this, and how can I get more information about it?
Sure. I'm just pulling it up right now. I actually have a meeting later today. It's with a group, and Drew could probably speak about this a little bit better than I can. But it's a composting pilot that they're reaching out. It's called the CPS Compost Don't Throw Me Away pilot program, and it's from the Zero Waste Schools program at 7 Generations Ahead, the Zero Waste Schools program at 7 Generations Ahead. And they're reaching out to schools. They're talking to like principals, engineers, cafeteria managers to see at which schools this would be most feasible to put into place. So it was just something that kind of came across my email and got back to an individual about it. But I think this is another opportunity to kind of plug the garden piece too, is that word gets out when your school is doing a lot of this sort of work, and then these sorts of opportunities they'll ask at the district level, like what schools should we reach out to as possible partners, and then they get directed to you on a more consistent basis. And so so that composting piece right now for us is something that we're just kind of beginning to explore, but it is a pilot program that's starting up in the Chicago Public Schools, and it's through that Zero Waste Schools program at 7 Generations Ahead.
That's great. Thank you. And then the next question is for both of you. Can can you speak a little bit about how you use the gardens to engage kids at different grade levels, so the younger kids versus the older kids, and how, if you use the garden differently for those age groups?
Sure. Kristen, do you want to take that one, or?
Sure, I can talk a little bit about that.
Sure.
So one of the workshops that we facilitate with the schools that we work with is called How and Why to Teach Outdoors. And part of that workshop, so we facilitate this workshop for all of the staff at the school. And part of that workshop, we work on just thinking about current lessons that are already happening in the classroom and how that can be connected to their outdoor space. We don't want to, there are so many different activities and lessons that are currently out there, and you know, some people might not be really comfortable with taking their classes out there, so this is just a great way to kind of do baby steps in getting them in using the space. I know from the schools that I've worked with, a lot of the planting, they may use like the younger grades in incorporating that piece. Also, I know a lot of them use the butterfly, releasing the butterflies as well. And some of the schools actually have the older students actually start laying out the raised garden beds. So if they have the edible garden, the older students would be, you know, using the information and actually figuring out what to plant where, how much space that plant needs, and actually drawing out like the map of the raised bed. Another piece I've seen schools use is just researching the plants. So if they have a native garden or a butterfly garden, what are the plants that are currently in there, and just researching them, and then actually creating like a plant ID book specifically for their school.
Yeah, I mean, those are all things that we're doing. I mean, I would just only add just observational activities. There's all sorts of things, whether it's bird watching, whether it's animal watching, whether it's just watching plants grow and kind of documenting that over time, or just capturing that as part of like your process in the scientific work that you're doing with students in the area of observation. It's a great opportunity to do that in a variety of different ways.
Great, thank you so much. And then I just want to do a quick check. Drew, have you been able to log on?
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Fabulous. Wonderful.
Great. Thank you so much for persisting. Okay, we are going to hand it over to you really quickly. And so I would like to now introduce Drew, who's the school garden coordinator for Chicago Public Schools. And in his role, he provides technical assistance to school gardeners, connects schools to garden resources, and oversees the implementation of a school garden food safety program. So Drew, take it away.
Great. Well, my goal today is just to provide the district perspective on kind of what we've been doing to support school gardens and give you a bit of background on where we're coming from, specifically around the research we're doing, the partners we're engaging, and the programming that we're launching. So next slide. And I think we'll skip this one. Yeah, perfect. So our work is coming out of the Office of Student Health and Wellness at CPS, as well as the Office of Nutrition Support Services. So we kind of work between the Dining Center team as well as the team that's supporting all health and wellness activities, as Principal Heitkamp was mentioning. So recess, physical education, food access, nutrition education, food and fitness partnerships, and school gardens. Learn Well at the top there is our umbrella campaign where we to support schools in aligning with CPS wellness policies. So, next slide. I wanted to provide a little bit of background of how we got started. So in October of 2012, CPS was awarded a USDA Farm to School grant to facilitate a food safety program for the district. And while we launched that at 5 schools early in June, we also realized that in order for that program to grow, we needed to get a sense of where our gardens were, how they were doing, and how we can better support them. So in the summer of 2013, we evaluated over 100 school gardens around the district And in that summer and fall, we also expanded Eat What You Grow trainings, and we held 16 other workshops for school gardeners around the district in order to support them. We collected feedback after each of those workshops to kind of guide our further programming. And in March of 2014, we launched our first school garden conference. We found that for us, holding professional development opportunities scattered throughout the year at various locations made it difficult for both presenters and for teachers who have incredibly busy schedules and are dedicated to their students. So we've tried to focus our trainings around district-wide professional development days. During the summer of 2014, just this last summer, we also launched a series of community forums to engage stakeholders and find out kind of what was the ideal school gardening program in the district. What kinds of resources did schools need? Do community members need? Do teachers need? And I'll share a little bit more about that later. But during the, and then kind of where we are today is really focusing on evaluations and research to drive our programming, to drive the kinds of supports that we're offering to schools and teachers. Next slide. In CPS, as an overview, we have an array of gardens. School gardens have been happening in Chicago for, to be frank, before I was born, I'm sure. And so we have gardens from the kitchen community, which have 104 gardens around the district. We have gardens from the American Heart Association, from Open Lands, from the Botanic Garden in Chicago. We have independent gardens that have popped up from community members, and we have a growing number of aquaponics and indoor gardening programs as well. Next slide. Overall, we have over 400 gardens throughout the district. This map gives you a sense of what that looks like, and those red balloons are our elementary school gardens. We have about 350 of those, and those gold stars are high school gardens, of which we have around 50. Next slide. But as has been demonstrated and expressed today, school gardens need love and support. And next slide. I would be remiss to not start with talking about school garden teams. And this is really the foundation, as both presenters have discussed. In a school garden team, you really need to have students, teachers, parents, kitchen staff, and community partners, as well as administration on board. You want to be engaging as many stakeholders as possible, and the most sustainable school garden is going to be the one that has as many hands doing that work, planning, and executing as possible. Next slide. So when it comes to garden teams, we really recommend that you push for broad attendance at garden meetings, that you stick to consistent schedules so that people can fluidly flow in and out, that you incentivize participation in the meetings as much as possible. Food is a great way to do that, and that you divide responsibilities. So you'll see in this slide that we have a handful of roles designated, but we find that this is just one of the best ways to have an effective school garden team, so that someone is in charge of food safety, someone's in charge of fundraising, someone's in charge of helping maintain a maintenance schedule, both one for the summer and one for during the school year. One person who's in charge of doing those special events, the back-to-school events, the fall harvest events, the cleanup days, etc. It's great to have someone who's a volunteer coordinator, someone who's doing event community outreach, and have somebody who's just in charge of maintaining supplies on an ongoing basis and making sure that you have everything you need for the next growing season. Next slide. So at CPS, being such a large district, so much of our work, it wouldn't happen without the strong support of our partners. We have 41 official school garden partners and vendors that support the district with our over 400 school gardens. And the average partner is working in 33 schools as of this year. So thanks, Kristen and Open Lands, for nearly doubling that with your efforts. But really what this is about is providing one-on-one technical assistance to schools. We find that the best way to launch the program is to really support them in that initial implementation, to try to be there for the first planting days, for the first harvest days, as much as possible. Next slide. So, the biggest thing that we've done to collect research on school gardens that I think would be interesting to people in Chicago and wider was what we called the Grow Well community forums. And this was about stakeholder engagement. We did this from June to September of this last summer. And we had over 320 responses from 6 community forums. We partnered with Healthy Schools Campaign to engage parents around the city for a forum. We engaged our school garden partners and vendors for one of the forums specifically to gather their feedback. And then we held 4 forums at schools throughout the district to engage teachers and community members around there. What we found as key barriers, the number one thing that came up was help with community engagement and summer support, engaging both the community to participate in events as well as maintenance, specifically non-school day maintenance, right? In the evenings, on the weekends, during the summer. We also found that a lot of teachers were looking for lessons and activities, and what you find most commonly out there are lessons and activities that might teach gardening or basic horticulture or cooking. But it's difficult to find a lesson that teaches fractions or a lesson that teaches world history from 1800 to 1900, right? And so teachers were really looking for support in finding ways to connect their garden into the units that they're already teaching. And teachers are really creative in doing this, but we should provide stronger support in those lessons and activities. We did find that a lot of teachers were looking for more gardening experience, more expertise themselves, so they felt more comfortable going in the garden. And this came up a lot. This is basic horticulture, learning about plant genetics and weather systems, so that they could field the array of questions that their students were throwing at them. And then, as Kristen mentioned, money and resources. And like she said, we're not talking necessarily about that initial build day, but we're talking about things that are needed for ongoing care. Compost on an annual basis, seedlings and seeds to purchase, resources to expand the garden bed or to add low tunnels for season extension throughout the school year so that there can be a longer growing season. Those sorts of things were what we heard a lot of. Next slide. So from these community forums, we came up with a series with 3 strategic goals for the district, and kind of broke those out to explain them further. The first goal we set was that all CPS garden teams have the resources and horticulture skills necessary to plant, maintain, and harvest edible plants with their students. What we're talking about is that schools are prepared for year-round maintenance by having adequate watering systems, soil, fertilizers, compost, etc. That schools have the resources to do this, and that the schools have a budget, either through grants, as has come up, or if the district or the school is fortunate enough to be able to provide a direct budget, not from grants, to support the school garden for its ongoing maintenance and support. We also wanted to see a district-level infrastructure to capture data about, so that we have a better sense of what these ongoing training needs and resource needs are. And we wanted to ensure that schools have the most up-to-date information on best practices for food production. Next slide. The second goal that we heard was necessary was that all teachers, regardless of content area, have the curricular tools, training, and capacity to integrate school garden activities into their scope and sequence. As both Principal Heitkamp and Kristen mentioned, what we're talking about here is making sure teachers feel supported in going out into the garden. That's what we mean when we say that they have the capacity to integrate school garden activities into their scope and sequence. And then, like I mentioned, those lessons and activities that directly align with the units that they're held accountable for. Next slide. Goal number 3 was that all school gardens foster an environment conducive to community engagement, including ongoing regular maintenance and ongoing activities. So we really want to see, what we've heard and what we want to see is that the school garden is seen as a place that is not, as Principal Heitkamp mentioned, not just this thing on the side of the school that is used on an occasional basis, but that it's really part of both the school culture and the community culture, that teachers are empowered to regularly leave the school walls and head into the garden to teach outdoors, and that the community feels welcome to come into the schoolyard and engage that way. So most of our, the way we've broken that down and what we want to see is really encompassed by that. Next slide. The way we've tried to respond to those needs is by having some centralized coordination of resources. So at CPS, we use a system called the Knowledge Center, for those who aren't in Chicago. The Knowledge Center is an internal infrastructure where we provide a whole host of resources depending on department and content area. So when it comes to school gardens, what we have available there are growing guides. So we have recommendations. Are you trying to just grow something from seed to harvest during that spring part of the year? Those same crops can be used in the fall, but you're kind of limiting what's grown over the summer, which is nice depending on your maintenance capacity. So we have recommendations for a 30 to 40-day salad garden that can be grown. We have recommendations on what we call the favorite salad. And these are great for community and parent engagement. These are things like cherry tomatoes, peppers, things like cucumbers, snap peas, things that are highly productive plants, so that though most of their growing time might be over the summer, that this is something that a number of people can participate in, and they can take something home as a reward for their work during summer maintenance. And then if schools have very limited capacity to maintain the garden, we have recommendations on perennial crops that grow well in this region, things that you can produce a salad out of, things like lamb's quarter or sorrel, or even you can oftentimes get a lot of growth out of rosemary. So these are recommendations for things, strawberries, raspberries, all things that will be coming back year after year with relatively minimal maintenance. We also provide on-site support and coordinated on-site support. So we have a network of master gardeners, which I'll talk about a little later. We have this array of school garden partners, and our office can provide technical assistance around nutrition education, farm-to-school engagement, and school gardens. We have our professional development network. So we have what we call in Chicago the Green Teacher Network. And if anyone's interested in joining, both Kristen or I can connect you with that listserv, so that you can both pose questions and see questions that others are posing. Hopefully you can chime in and answer questions from other teachers who are trying to do outdoor and edible education. We have a list of lessons and activities that teachers can access. We have this, well, so I mentioned the Green Teacher Network as this online forum. Essentially, it's also as a listserv is a great place where people regularly are posting workshops, training opportunities, random resources they see. So it's more than just a space for question and answers. And we have vetted web resources on the Knowledge Center. We have videos that we can suggest. We have there's all sorts of great both online tutorials, webinars, and how-to videos. I'll also mention at this time for those in Chicago, our next large professional development district-wide will be March 21st from 8:30 to noon at Marshall High School. This is going to be a Saturday morning. We're going to have 7 workshops on everything from permaculture design in your garden to planning your garden for succession planting throughout the school year to cooking lessons that you can use based on the prior workshop that will be held on planning your garden. So we'll walk you through how to plan everything and then walk you through how to cook from that. We'll have connections with doing physical activity in the garden and another partner sharing their curriculum, which will be available to teachers on called Sow and Grow, about anything and everything involving school gardens there. Next slide. As Principal Heitkamp really emphasized, and because we're out of the Office of Student Health and Wellness with that dotted line, we really strongly believe that your school garden can and should be used to promote school wellness. This is a great opportunity to further integrate your school garden in the overall school culture and to create as many touch points as possible. You know, most historically, a lot of gardens have been connected to math and science curriculum, and as Rosa mentioned, there's really peer-reviewed research to support that, but the garden is just a natural fit for health and wellness activity. We recommend that all schools have a wellness team, and that wellness team cross-pollinate with the garden team. That if the two teams aren't the same, that members from the wellness team are also sitting on the garden team. That you have one non-staff member on the garden team to support parent engagement. That you're doing PE lessons around the garden, talking to your students about body smart gardening, using sunscreen, how to bend properly, how to lift properly for digging in the garden and for doing that work. That the garden is used for frequent movement breaks so that students, as Kristen mentioned, aren't just sitting all day long in their chair, but that they're getting up to refresh their brain, to awaken their bodies. And a garden is a great place to do that. You can go on weeding blitzes. You can go do 10 minutes of yoga in the garden, and it's a wonderful space to facilitate those activities. We want to make sure that the garden is accessible during recess, during larger outdoor activities with the school, that the garden is being used for nutrition education, that anytime you're in the garden, you're reinforcing nutrition lessons about the nutritional benefits of the various items that you happen to be growing in the garden. And as Principal Heitkamp mentioned, that your garden is used to enhance the school meals. The Eat What You Grow program is what we've developed to facilitate that. And so this is a food safety training program that I'll touch on a little bit later, but it allows school garden produce to be served in the dining center. And students definitely get excited about that. When they see that purple lettuce that's been growing in the garden, or when they know that there was a carrot harvest that morning that's going to end up on the line, or even something as simple as basil that's being incorporated into the pasta sauce that was cooked for the school meal, but it's basil that came from the garden. You can highlight that on the line. You can make sure the students know that today's lunch features something from the school garden. We want to ensure that school gardens are used for celebrations and fundraisers, so holding planting days, harvest days, doing walkathons through the garden space, doing selling seedlings, for instance, as a fundraiser, growing flowers and bulbs that'll bloom early in the year and then replanting right after they come up with vegetables. But selling those flowers around Mother's Day can be a great fundraiser. And we want to see the garden as a space that it's a reward to be in, right? So teachers are saying, you know, if everyone's on track this week, instead of having a pizza party on Friday, we're going to do something a bit healthier. We're going to do our regular classroom activities in the garden because everybody was awesome this week. Those kinds of activities. Next slide. I wanted to share a handful of lessons and activities that we make available to our teachers in Chicago for those who are outside and for those who haven't seen these yet. These websites are both, you know, I especially like them because they're portals. They're opportunities to access lessons and activities about a variety of subjects, a variety of grade bands. So I'll leave you with these resources when you access the slides afterwards. The Eat What You Grow program, as I mentioned, is this school garden food safety training program. And, you know, to be frank, for a long time, students in Chicago weren't allowed to eat the food they were growing. And so a lot of these nutrition education benefits were lost on them. Fortunately, right now we have a certification program. Teachers attend a 2-hour training where they're introduced to our comprehensive food safety manual. And after that, they develop a personalized food safety plan around a 2 to 3 page document for their school. And either our office or one of our partner organizations can provide implementation support for that to help you walk through planning or to be there to answer any questions on Harvest Day. So for those in Chicago, our next 2 workshops for that, if you'd like to certify your school, will be March 18th at Pulaski Elementary School and April 1st at Dunbar. I have my contact information there, and it'll be available at the end of the presentation as well. So don't hesitate to reach out to me with any questions about that program. We also have set up a system for master gardeners to support school gardens. And what this allows for is, you know, master gardeners are a wonderful conduit for best practices, for up-to-date information on identifying and eradicating pests and diseases, for helping teach lessons in the garden around 4-H. So we have a program. If you can access the slides afterwards, those topics are actually hyperlinks, which will take you to a Google form where you can identify the kind of support you're looking for, and we can do our best to match you with a master gardener in your area. And the last thing I wanted to talk about is our coordinated approach to evaluation. So what we're doing in Chicago is a 2-part evaluation. One part will involve checking up on gardens in the spring, right before summer or right after schools are dismissed for the summer, to make sure that the garden's been planted, to see if there are infrastructure improvements that we should do, to see how summer support initially is going, summer maintenance. So this tool is something that we're unveiling district-wide this summer in order to really just identify schools that we can provide extra support to, and hopefully get them up to speed before students return in the fall. Next slide. We also have a school garden survey that is going out to all principals as part of the Healthy CPS survey. And in here we ask questions around the utilization and integration of the school garden. And again, this is to drive our programming at the district, but data and data is so important in order to drive that. So we want to get a better sense of what subject areas are using the garden, what grade levels are using the garden, how often students are in the garden, how big the garden teams are, how many people and who's on them, and the most common barriers that schools are facing. Again, so that we can see maybe we're doing really well with middle school science and math classes, but we're really lacking with that 4th, 5th grade or 3rd, 4th, 5th grade area and around language arts and social sciences. Or maybe we're really good with diverse learners, but we could use more support in math and hard sciences. More to come on that, and if you have any questions about our evaluations, about our programming, or about the partners that we are working with, please feel free to contact me. There's my email address and my phone number on this slide, and I hope everybody gets growing this spring.
Great. Thank you so much, Drew, for that really comprehensive presentation. I know we are way over our time limit, and so we want to go ahead and wrap up the webinar. We really appreciate everybody that stayed on throughout the webinar. Thank you so much to our fantastic presenters. Just as a reminder, we will be sharing the slides and a link to the recording of the webinar. That email will most likely go out early next week. And we've also had a request for a handful of links that the panelists presented. So we'll be sure to include those in the follow-up email. So thank you again so much for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your day.